In Yu-Gi-Oh, you usually have to tribute 1 or 2 monsters to normal summon high level monsters. But in this video, we're going to go over some of the best level 5 or higher monsters that cheat out this game mechanic and can be brought down with no tributes. Starting us off at number 10, we have Gouki Riscorpio. This is a level 5 Earth Warrior monster that can be normal summoned without tributing when you either control no monsters or only Gouki monsters. Then, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, it lets you add a Gouki card from your deck to your hand. While Riscorpio was by far one of the worst main deck Goukis when compared to the others, this was still a mainstay in almost every Gouki list simply due to being one more unique Gouki name you could play for their floating effect. The Goukis were one of the first really good link spam engines we put into the game, and they were used for all kinds of degenerate combos when they were meta. All Gouki monsters float into another Gouki monster when sent from the field to the graveyard, and this includes getting sent off for a link summon. This means you can just keep grabbing more extenders from the deck as you combo. And because they're all warriors, they can be used to go into one of the most broken link monsters to ever be printed, Isolde, Two Tails of Noble Knights, which gets you both a search and a special summon from the deck. As a result, the Goukis were used to make unbreakable boards and ruined many formats when they were the top dog combo deck. While the Nightmare engine was still at full power with Mermaid and Goblin, they could easily extra link your opponent and easily lock off of a couple of cards. This represented a total special summon lock to your opponent, which was very hard to out. The release of Topologic Gumbler Dragon made them even stronger, as now you were also going to have to deal with getting hand ripped for 4 before your turn even began. As if that hadn't been enough, Gouki was also one of the best engines to bring out a 5 material Rongo Miniad when it was still legal. With all that said, the problem with every single one of these cards wasn't really Gouki, but rather the broken extra deck monsters that would eventually all get addressed by Konami. Riscorpio wasn't that good to have in your hand, and it even had bad synergy with one of the best warrior extenders, Junk Forward, but it saw play due to being a Gouki just the same. You don't really have to be that picky when you combo, it just takes a couple of monsters on the field, so it has enough tops to make it on this list anyways, even if it's only at the number 10 spot. And at number 9, we have Fusilier Dragon, the Dual Mode Beast. This is a level 7 Dark Machine monster with 2800 attack and 2000 defense, and it can be normal summoned without tributes, but then those stats get dropped in half. Despite not really having an effect on the field, Fusilier has managed to see play a couple of times in older formats due to how well its summoning condition, stats, and attribute matched up. Really early on, this was one of the main beaters in skill drain focus strategies, since that card will negate Fusilier's effect to drop his own stats while in the field, and basically give you a normal summonable 2800 beater. For this reason, it was sometimes teched in against these decks, so that you can turn their own floodgate against them. Because of its dark attribute, this meant that eventually Dark Armed Dragon decks could slide this in as a way to play around Skill Drain and Shadow Imprisoning Mirror. This dark attribute also meant this card worked really well with Deck Devastation Virus and Eradicator Epidemic Virus. Deck Dev can get rid of all small monsters your opponent has in their hand, field, and also all their draws for the next 3 turns. And Eradicator offers the same kind of effect but for either spells or traps. The catch is they need to tribute a highly statted dark monster as their activation requirement. However, due to the way the game mechanics work, you can just set Fusilier in face-down defense position and use it to fulfill the requirements of either virus. This was such a powerful interaction that allowed Fusilier to see play in many Dragon Ruler formats, since it could be used with Eradicator fodder to instantly win the game against spellbooks, which played mostly spells in their decks. It also wasn't even that bad to draw itself due to being level 7, which matched with all the other rulers and allowed you access to many of the big win cons of the rulers, spamming the field with really powerful level 7s of the time. And at number 8, we have Machina Metalcruncher. This is a level 9 Earth Machine monster with 2800 attack that can be normal summoned without tributes if you control no face-up cards, but then its attack gets dropped to 1000. On summon, this card lets you reveal 3 Earth Machine monsters from your deck, and then randomly add one of them to your hand. This card, having 1800 attack with normal summon without tributing, is a reference to how this card is a retrain of Machina Gearframe, which has the same stat line. Machina Metalcruncher is a pretty good card in Earth Machines, a rogue deck from a few formats ago. The search being random usually doesn't matter, as you can just reveal 3 copies of the card you absolutely want in your hand, and even if you can't, the deck has countless ways to search what you need anyways. Earth Machine was notable for having really long and intricate combo lines, all for a really mediocre looking board when you're finally done. It did have an easy time going for Trinket of All Calamities to lock your opponent out of the game back when that card was still legal, with Metalcruncher even being level 9 itself, but there were much better strategies which could do the same thing better. Once VFD got banned, all Earth Machine could hope to do when comboing uninterrupted was to draw cards with Infinite Track Tunneler and Machina Overdrive's graveyard effects, and hopefully end on a defense position Dora so that you don't die next turn. The deck got way better with the release of Therion King Regulus, who coincidentally also happens to be an Earth Machine, and now gave the deck a great threat to have on their end board with its negate, as well as their only way to answer cards like Nibiru the Primal Being. The deck had some neat things going for it, like being able to make Zeus without going into the battle phase through Infinite Track Anchor Drill, or using Dora to protect floodgates like Token Collector, but it was never good enough to be more than a rogue option at any point. And coming at number 7, we have Hieratic Dragon of Eset. This is a level 5 dragon with 1900 attack and 1200 defense that can be normal summon without tributing, but then its original attack becomes 1000. While on the field, it can target a face-up dragon normal monster you control and make all your Hieratic monsters on the board become that level until the end phase. Finally, when it's tributed, you can special summon a dragon normal monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard, but its stats become 0. Hieratics were an explosive XC spam deck that had easy access to the rank 6 pool, which gave them access not only to some of the earliest extra deck negates in Photon Strike Bouncer, and also their archetypal boss monster, Hieratic Dragon King Atum, which can special summon any dragon monster from the deck. Eset, Nebtet, Su, and Tefnuit all share the last effect to special summon a normal monster from anywhere when they're tributed, forming the core of the Hieratic engine. Eset and Tefnuit were the only ones who could be summoned to the field for free, with Eset being your main combo enabler going first, since Tefnuit needed your opponent to control the monster to special summon itself. Once you have one of them out, either Nebtet or Su can tribute the monster to special summon themselves out, and then the graveyard effect will trigger and give you a Watt-tailed dragon for an instant rank 6. Eset's on-field effect also allowed you to have access to other Xyz pools, such as 4 and 5, if you were fine with playing more normal dragon bricks though. While the deck could be explosive, it was often held back due to its inherent brickiness, since you needed to play vanillas in your deck and draw a combination of monsters to start playing. Hieratics would eventually find a new home with Dragon Rulers in 2014, as Hieratic Rulers rose to be one of the most popular Dragon Ruler variants at some point. Since all the rulers were eventually hit to 1 on the ban list, easy access to a Tum was one of their few ways of actually consistently seeing your rulers every match. Unfortunately, as the Dragon Rulers were eventually all wiped by the ban list, so were the Hieratics, as there was little reason to play one without the other. And at number 6, we have Blackwing Sirocco the Dawn. This is a level 5 Dark Wing Beast monster with 2000 attack and 900 defense, and it can be normal summon without tributing when your opponent controls a monster and you don't. Once per turn, it can target a Blackwing monster you control and make that monster gain the attack of all other Blackwing monsters in the field until the end of the turn, but other monsters cannot attack this turn. Sirocco was one of the best monsters in the first iteration of Blackwing decks during the Synchro era. It provided the deck with an easily accessible big body that filled a similar role to Cyber Dragon when it came to contesting other normal summons. While it does take up your normal summon unlike Cyber Dragon, that means this card also works with Black Whirlwind, which lets you add a Blackwing monster from your deck to your hand with less attack than the one you just normal summoned. This means you had access to basically every other good Blackwing monster in your deck with Black Whirlwind and Sirocco. This card being a level 5 was extremely relevant, as this means it combos perfectly with Blackwing Vayu, the Emblem of Honor. Vayu can banish itself another Blackwing monster from your graveyard to special summon a Blackwing Synchro monster from your extra deck whose levels equals their total levels. So by banishing Sirocco and Vayu, you can go into Blackwing Armed Wing without needing to use any monsters on the field. Now, it does have its effects negated, but it's still a huge body on the field for free. This interaction was so strong that it even gave rise to a deck called Vayu Turbo, which plays less Blackwings for more Foolish Barrel-like effects in Armageddon Knight and Dark Refer, as well as milling with Raikou the Lightsworn Hunter, only to facilitate getting both Vayu and Sirocco in the graveyard as soon as possible. Sirocco's field effect could also decide games at times, as it can let you beat over high attack problem monsters without spending your Kalut. This was also a card you could side in against Blackwings themselves because it actually takes the stats of all Blackwings in the field and not just yours, letting you hit for a lot of damage if your opponent is playing the deck. And coming in at number 5, we have Fog King. This is a level 7 water spellcaster with 0 attack and defense. Despite that, it can also be summoned by tributing just 1 or no monsters, and its attack becomes equal to the combined attacks of what was tributed over. While on the field, Fog King prevents either player from tributing cards. Despite its unique Floodgate effect, Fog King actually became first playable due to Dragon Ruler decks. Just like Fusilier Dragon, having a normal summon a level 7 monster was quite decent at the time, where Mecha Phantom Beast Dracosack and Big Eye were game-winning threats by themselves. However, unlike Fusilier, this card actually worked even better with the mainstay Ruler engine. Because this is a monster with less than 500 attack, it can be special summoned from the graveyard with Debris Dragon's effect. Debris saw lots of play as one of the best search targets off of Tempest's Banish effect, as a great synchro summon enabler. While the more popular card played to combo Debris and Dragon Ruler decks was Trigon, since it allowed you to go into Black Rose Dragon, some players opted to play Fog King to go into Star Eater instead. While it may not seem as strong as Black Rose's full board wipe, a huge beater which becomes unaffected when attacking is still pretty respectable. After this short-lived popularity, this card would once again return spotlight with the release of the new Monarch support. The deck became tier 1 overnight with the new structure deck, which brought the Monarchs together in a cohesive archetype. Without sideboard hate, the deck felt like it was unstoppable by anything outside of its own brickiness, which was way less of an issue at the time with Cuirass combos and Triple Chicken Game and Upstart Goblin being legal. This is where cards like Fog King and Master Restrict came in as silver bullets versus this match. Fog King was generally considered a bit better, since if you could get a decently statted one out, your opponent would need to be running something unusual like Landrobe or Book of Eclipse to out it, while back row removal like Twin Twisters was much more commonly seen in both main and side. Since Fog King is a tribute monster who stops tributes, who opened it would often decide the mirror match, where a Fog King next to a March of the Monarchs was borderline impossible to deal with. And coming in at number 4, we have Coach Captain Bearman. This is a level 8 Fire Beast Warrior monster with 2600 attack that can be normal summon without tributing, but then its attack becomes 1300. Once per turn, it can activate its effect to make all level 4 Beast Warrior monsters you control become level 8 until the end of the turn. It also can't be used as an Xyz material except for the Xyz summon of a Fire Warrior monster. Bearman was initially meant to be used alongside Coach Soldier Wolfbark, which gets to reborn a level 4 Fire Beast Warrior monster from your graveyard when summoned. However, while Wolfbark saw so much play in decks like Fire Fist that it even ended up on the limited list for a while, the captain was forgotten for a really long time. That is, until Zodiacs came into the scene. As if it weren't enough for Zodiac Broad Bolt to search the entire Zoo lineup, it could also search Pendulum Scales or even draw engines like Coach Captain Bearman. By getting this card out while also having a couple of other Zodiacs on the field, which wasn't a hard task by any means, you could use this effect to turn all of them into level 8 and go into Coach King Giant Trainer. This card has the effect to detach one Xyz material from itself to draw a card, and if it's a monster, you deal 800 damage to your opponent, but it locks you out of the battle phase that turn. The real notable thing about this card effect is that it's a thrice per turn. On a monster, you will always bring it out with 3 materials anyway, so in the end, it's just a draw 3 for the low cost of your battle phase. While this wasn't as powerful as the Fusion Substitute into Elder Entity Northern combos that Zoos could also do, it was figured out much earlier and allowed early Zoo variants to get into their unsearchable power cards just the same. This was big in Zodiac Kaiju variants, which had other ways of putting level 8s onto the field too. It really speaks to how powerful Zoos really were when a draw 3 combo was one of the least threatening things they could be going for at some point. And coming in at number 3, we have Qliphort Stealth. This is a level 8 Earth Machine Pendulum monster whose pendulum effect says that you cannot special summon except for Qli monsters while also boosting your Qlis by 300 attack each. Its monster effects are that it can be normal summon without tributing, but if it's summoned like that or by special summon, its stats drop from 2800 to 1800 and its levels become 4. It's also unaffected by activated effects of any monsters at the level or rank lower to its current level, if it was brought onto the field by a normal summon. And lastly, when it's tribute summoned by tributing Qli monsters, you can target a card in the field and bounce it to the hand, but your opponent cannot respond to this effect's activation with cards or effects. Qliphorts were the first viable pendulum strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, even if its playstyle made it more of a stun deck rather than being a combo-heavy deck, as most future pendulum strategies would become. Qliphort Scout was a great consistency tool, with its soft once per turn, pay 800 to add a Qli monster from your deck to your hand, which landed on the ban list for a really long time. Stealth got introduced to the game in a later support wave and provided the archetype with a much needed non-destruction removal. The bounce matched up with the meta extremely well, being able to remove sticky cards like Dante Travel to the Burning Abyss and Ritual Beast Ulti Petoflin. This card's Spells Before Nature also matched extremely well with the floating effects of a couple of other Qli monsters. When they're tributed, Qliphort Helix and Qliphort Carrier let you pop a spell or trap or bounce a monster respectively, so by just having Stealth be last in the chain, you can get off all 3 disruption effects that your opponent cannot do anything about all at once. And as if that wasn't enough, this card can also bounce your own cards, which means that if your opponent doesn't have anything worth removing, you can just bounce your own Qliphort Scout to get another search. While Aplacafort Towers overshadowed pretty much every other member of the archetype when it came out to being a boss monster, Stealth was certainly also one of the scariest things a Qli deck could drop into you at the time. And at number 2, we have Zaphion the Timelord. This is a level 10 water fairy monster with 0 attack and defense that cannot be special summoned from the deck, but if you control no monsters, it can be normal summoned with no tributes. Zaphion cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, and you take no damage in battles involving it. At the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can shuffle all spells and traps your opponent controls into their deck. Also, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you draw 1 card. And finally, it shuffles itself from the field into the deck during your standby phase. Zaphion rose up as a really good side deck answer for True Draco decks. There wasn't really any better mass backrow removal legal at the time. The closest thing was Twin Twisters, which has a discard cost associated to it. To make things worse, all True Draco spell traps float into either back row or monster removal when sent from the field to the graveyard, making destruction of them one of the worst ways to get rid of them. And lastly, even if they can't capitalize off the floating effects, they can still use the cards in the graveyard to go plus later on in the game, with Disciples of the True Draco Phoenix being able to shuffle 3 of them back into the deck to draw a card. This is where Zaphion came in. Being indestructible means it couldn't really be answered by any True Draco engine card, and can get rid of their entire back row at the small cost of your battle phase. Since it wiped away everything, you would even get rid of their Dragonic Diagram, one of the strongest field spells ever put into the game, so much so that it's limited to this day. And even if they had a non-engine answer for your Zaphion, such as Forbidden Chalice or Monarch Stormforth, you'd still be going neutral off the exchange due to drawing you a card when it was removed. While this card did fall off as we got stronger going second options like Evenly Matched and Lightning Storm, it was still one of the best ways to deal with True Dracos for a long time as they were a big meta threat. And finally, at number 1, we have Beast King Barbaros. This is a level 8 Earth Beast Warrior monster with 3000 attack and 1200 defense. It can be normal summoned with no tributes, but then its original attack becomes 1900. It can also be tribute summoned by using 3 monsters instead, in which case it destroys all cards your opponent controls. Despite its simple effects, Barbaros is by far the most iconic high-level monster which can be summoned with no tributes. It even got itself not 1, but 2 retrains in King Beast Barbaros and Beast King Machine King Barbaros even if these weren't nearly as relevant as the original. The only reason why Fusilier wasn't the premier skill drain threat forever was because Barbaros had 3000 attack over it, which was perfect for all the decks that didn't really care about Fusilier's level and attribute. Since it's a Beast Warrior monster, it fit perfectly in TG stun decks, which were already packing skill drain. On top of that, they also often played Horn of the Phantom Beast, a battle equipped for Beasts and Beast Warriors, which makes you draw a card whenever you win a battle. It also was a staple in hero beat decks, not only as a huge beat stick, but also as the deck's only avenue to Elemental Hero Gaia through Miracle Fusion. This card ended up seeing play in all kinds of offbeat meta strategies as the best normal summonable beater in the game, as long as it either had its effects negated or was cheated out. Its effect to blow up the field of summon with 3 tributes never really came up, but it's interesting to note that it was a combination of Moisture Creature and Qliphort the Lightning, 2 older monsters which pop all back row monsters respectively when summoned with 3 tributes as well. And lastly, despite being such an old card, this card actually has some tops as late as 2019. In Danger and Guard Dragon decks as a 3-of nonetheless. For a really short period, you could play this as a normal summonal level 8 to pair with your high level Dangers and other dragons to have easier access to their rank 8s. While cards like Hope Harbinger and Photon Lord are strong by themselves, what made this card worth playing was that Galaxy Eyes Dark Matter Dragon was legal at the time. Dark Matter can be ranked up on top of any Galaxy Eyes Xyz monster and gives you 3 Dragon Foolish Burials on summon, on top of being a huge double attacking beater when going second. Even if Barbaros might not be the strongest or most heavily played card in here, it's certainly one of the first ones that comes to mind when someone hears can be normal summoned without tributing, and because of this card takes the first spot on this list. Alright, and that's the list. If you happen to know of any other cards you might have missed or have any ideas for future videos just like this one, please let us know down in the comments below.